number he boasted about killing Deathworlders, she made him question everything. The galactic trading hub of Nexus 7 was always busy. Ships from 100 different worlds came and went every hour. Merchants sold their goods. Travelers searched for transport, and in the darker corners of the station, warriors gathered to drink and share their stories. Commander Vrex Thar of the Korthani Empire sat at the center of a crowded table in the Burning Star Tavern. His gray-blue skin was covered with ritual scars, each one representing a victory in battle. His 4 eyes scanned the room with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. Around him sat other warriors from different species, all listening to his words with a mixture of fear and admiration. "You want to know true fear?" Vrexthar said, his deep voice cutting through the noise of the tavern. He lifted his drink, a thick purple liquid that would kill most species in minutes. "True fear is what I saw in the eyes of the Deathworlders when I found them." The other warriors leaned closer. Everyone in the galaxy knew about Deathworlders. They came from planets so dangerous, so hostile to life, that surviving there made them nearly unstoppable. And among all the Deathworlders in the known universe, the humans of Earth were the most feared. "I have killed 17 humans," Vrexthar continued, letting the number hang in the air. 17 of those monsters. And I am still standing. Rude be a 17. 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 A young Valorian soldier, barely old enough to be away from his homeworld, spoke up. His voice trembled slightly. "The stories say that even one human can destroy an entire squad. They say they do not feel pain. They say they keep fighting even when their bodies should stop working." Vrexthar laughed, a harsh sound that made several nearby patrons flinch. "The stories are true. That is what makes killing them such an achievement. Let me tell you about my first human kill." He settled back in his chair, enjoying the attention. This was his favorite part of any evening. The telling of his victories. The fear and respect in the eyes of those who listened. It was during the border conflict of the outer systems. My unit was sent to clear a human outpost on the moon of Kepler 442b. Intelligence told us there were only civilian researchers there. Easy targets, we thought. A simple mission. Vrexthar's 4 eyes darkened at the memory. We were wrong. There was one human soldier among them. Just one. A female. Smaller than most of their kind. She had been injured in an earlier attack. Her left arm was broken. She had burns covering half her body. By all logic, she should have been lying down, waiting for death. He paused to drink, letting the tension build. Instead, she fought us. With one working arm and wounds that would have killed any of us 10 times over, she fought. She killed 3 of my soldiers before I finally got close enough to end her. And even then, even as my blade went through her chest, she tried to grab my throat with her remaining hand. The young Valorian's face had gone pale. "How did you survive?" "Speed and experience," Vrexthar said. "Humans are strong, and they do not give up. But they can still die. You just have to be faster than them. Stronger than them. You have to strike before they have a chance to use their greatest weapon." "Their weapons technology?" another warrior asked. "No. Their will. Their absolute refusal to accept defeat. That is what makes them dangerous. Their bodies can survive almost anything. They heal from wounds that would be fatal to us. They can operate on almost no sleep. They can survive in temperatures that would freeze our blood or boil it. But it is their minds that make them truly terrifying. They simply do not know how to stop." Vrexthar spent the next hour sharing more stories. Each one was more violent than the last. He talked about ambushes and battles. He talked about the sounds humans made when they died, and the looks in their eyes when they realized it was over. He talked about collecting trophies from his kills. Small items that he kept in a locked box on his ship. The other warriors listened with growing respect. To have killed 17 Deathworlders was no small achievement. Most soldiers never even saw a human in person. Those who did rarely survived the encounter. As the night went on, the tavern began to empty. The young Valorian had left hours ago, his face still haunted by the stories he had heard. The other warriors had gone back to their ships or their rented rooms. Eventually, only Vrexthar remained at the table, surrounded by empty glasses and the fading echoes of his own glory. That was when she walked in. Vrexthar noticed her immediately. His survival instincts, sharpened by decades of combat, screamed a warning the moment she stepped through the door. She was human. He could tell by the way she moved, that strange combination of efficiency and grace that only Deathworlders possessed. She was tall for a female of her species, with dark skin and hair that was cut short. She wore simple civilian clothes, nothing that marked her as military. But there was something in her eyes that told a different story. She walked to the bar and ordered a drink. The bartender, a nervous Trilaxian with too many arms, served her quickly, and then found an excuse to move to the other end of the bar. Even here, in neutral space, people kept their distance from humans. Vrexthar should have left. He should have paid his bill and walked back to his ship and never thought about this moment again. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the alcohol. Maybe it was pride. Or maybe it was something else entirely, something he would not understand until much later. He stood up and walked toward her. The human did not react as he approached. She kept her eyes on her drink, a simple glass of clear liquid that Vrexthar recognized as water. She did not flinch when he sat down on the stool next to her. She did not even look at him. "You are a long way from your homeworld, human," Vrexthar said. "So are you," she replied. Her voice was calm and steady. There was no fear in it. Vrexthar felt a flash of irritation. He was used to being feared. He was used to seeing people tremble when he spoke to them. This human acted like she was sitting next to just another traveler, not one of the most decorated warriors in the Korthani military. "Do you know who I am?" he asked. "No." She still did not look at him. "I am Commander Vrexthar. I have killed 17 of your kind." Finally, she turned to face him. Her eyes were brown, a common color among humans, but there was something unusual about them. They seemed older than her face. They seemed to carry the weight of experiences that Vrexthar could not imagine. 17, she repeated. "That is a specific number. I remember each one. I remember how they fought, how they died. I keep something from each of them as a reminder." The human nodded slowly. "A reminder of what?" Vrexthar was confused by the question. "A reminder of my victories, of my skill, of the fact that I have done what few others can claim." I see." She turned back to her water. "And what were their names?" "Their names? The 17 humans you killed. What were their names?" Vrexthar opened his mouth to answer, then closed it again. He realized, with a strange feeling of discomfort, that he did not know. He had never thought to ask. He had never seen them as individuals with names and histories. They were Deathworlders. Enemies. Targets. That was all. "Their names do not matter," he said finally. "They were enemies of the Korthani Empire. That is all I needed to know." The human took a sip of her water. "I suppose you are right. Names do not matter much in war. Actions matter. Choices matter. But names?" She shook her head. "Names are just sounds we give to things, so we can pretend we understand them." Vrexthar studied her face, trying to understand what she meant. There was something strange about this conversation. It was not going the way he had expected. Usually, when he told people about his kills, they responded with fear or respect, or both. This human seemed to feel neither. She seemed almost sad. "You do not fear me," he said. It was not a question. "No. Why not? I have told you what I have done. I have killed your people. I could kill you too. If I wanted." The human smiled, but there was no happiness in it. "You could try. Many have tried. I am still here." Something in her voice made Vrexthar pause. He looked at her more carefully now. He noticed the small scars on her hands, He noticed the way she sat, balanced and ready, even though she appeared relaxed. He noticed the slight bulge under her jacket that probably marked a hidden weapon. "You are military," he said. "I was. A long time ago. Now I am just a traveler." "What was your rank?" She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I was a sergeant. 127th Expeditionary Force, specialized in hostile environment operations." Vrexthar knew that term. Hostile environment operations meant missions on the most dangerous planets in the galaxy, the places where even Deathworlders had trouble surviving. It meant this woman had seen things that would break most soldiers. "You have seen combat," he said. "Yes. Many times? Too many to count." Vrexthar felt the strange feeling again. It was almost like respect, but not quite. It was more like recognition. He was looking at someone who understood violence the way he did, someone who had lived their life surrounded by death. "Why did you leave the military?" he asked. The human was quiet for a long time. She finished her water and set the glass down on the bar. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "Because I started asking myself the same question you could not answer." "What question?" "What were their names?" "The ones I killed. The enemies who fell to my weapons. I started wondering who they were. What their lives were like before they ended up in front of my gun. Did they have families? Did they have dreams? Did they wake up that morning thinking it would be their last day?" Vrexthar felt uncomfortable. He did not like where this conversation was going. They were enemies. That is all that matters in war. Is it? The human turned to look at him again. "I used to think that too. I used to believe that the only thing that mattered was the mission. Complete the objective. Eliminate the targets. Go home. I was very good at believing that." "What changed?" The human reached into her pocket and pulled out a small object. It was a data chip, the kind used to store personal information. She set it on the bar between them. "I found this on a soldier I killed. He was Valorian, young, probably on his first deployment. I shot him before he even saw me coming. Quick and clean, just like I was trained. But when I searched his body, I found this chip. I do not know why I kept it. I should have left it with the body. But something made me take it." She pushed the chip toward Vrexthar. "I watched the recordings on it later. They were messages from his family. His mother, telling him she was proud of him. His younger sister, showing him a painting she made. His father, giving him advice about staying safe. They had no idea he was already dead when I watched those recordings. They were still sending messages to a son and brother who would never receive them." Vrexthar did not touch the chip. He stared at it like it was something dangerous. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. "Because you remind me of myself. The person I used to be. The soldier who counted kills like they were achievements. Who kept trophies and told stories and felt proud of the blood on their hands." Her eyes met his. And Vrexthar saw something in them that he did not expect. It was not anger. It was not judgment. It was pity. "I spent 10 years being that person," she continued. 10 years convincing myself that what I did was necessary and good. 10 years believing that the number of enemies I killed was a measure of my worth. And then I found that chip. And I realized something. What? I realized that every number had a name. Every target had a life. Every enemy was someone's child, someone's friend, someone's love. And when I killed them, I did not just end their lives. I destroyed everything they could have become, every choice they might have made, every moment they might have lived. She picked up the chip and put it back in her pocket. I still carry this with me. I never watched the recordings again, but I carry it everywhere I go. To remind myself of what I did, who I was. Vrexthar found that his throat was dry. He wanted to argue with her. He wanted to tell her that she was weak, that she did not understand what it meant to be a warrior. But the words would not come. Something about what she had said was working its way into his mind, finding the cracks in his certainty. I am not like you, he said finally. I am a soldier. I do what must be done. The human nodded. That is what I told myself too. For a very long time. She stood up from her stool and left enough credits on the bar to pay for both their drinks. Enjoy your trophies, Commander. I hope they bring you comfort in the years ahead. She walked toward the door of the tavern. Vrexthar watched her go, his 4 eyes tracking her movement. Just before she reached the exit, she stopped and turned back. By the way, she said, my name is Maya Chen, in case you ever find yourself wanting to remember names instead of numbers. Then she was gone, and Vrexthar was alone with his thoughts and his memories and the growing feeling that something fundamental had shifted inside him. He stayed at the bar for another hour, not drinking, just thinking. When he finally returned to his ship, he went straight to the locked box where he kept his trophies. He opened it and looked at the 17 items inside. A piece of cloth. A broken watch. A data chip. Small things that had meant something to someone once. For the first time, he wondered who those someones were. He closed the box and went to bed. But sleep did not come easily that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw faces. 17 faces, blurred by time and memory, but somehow more real than they had ever been before. What were their names? The question echoed in his mind until dawn. 3 cycles passed on Nexus 7. Vrexthar told himself he was staying because his ship needed repairs. He told himself it was because he was waiting for new orders from the Korthani High Command. He told himself many things, but none of them were true. He was staying because he could not stop thinking about Maya Chen. Her words had planted themselves in his mind like seeds, and now they were growing into something he did not recognize. He found himself lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling of his cabin, trying to remember the faces of the humans he had killed. Most of them were gone, faded into a blur of combat and adrenaline, but some remained clear. The woman with the broken arm who had fought until her last breath. The young soldier who had cried for his mother before Vrexthar ended his life. The old man who had thrown himself in front of a child to shield her from the blast. He had never thought about the child. What happened to her after he left? Did someone find her? Did she survive? Did she grow up haunted by the memory of watching her grandfather die? These questions made him angry. He was a warrior of the Korthani Empire. He had served with honor for 40 years. He had earned his scars and his reputation through blood and sacrifice. He did not owe explanations or apologies to anyone, least of all a human who had walked away from her own duty. But the anger never lasted. It always faded into something quieter and more uncomfortable. Something that felt dangerously close to doubt. On the 4th cycle, he found himself walking through the station's commercial district without any destination in mind. He passed shops, selling goods from across the galaxy. He passed food stalls offering cuisine from 100 different worlds. He passed travelers of every species, all going about their business without giving him a second glance. Then he saw her. Maya was sitting at a small cafe near the observation windows, watching ships come and go in the darkness beyond. She had a cup of something steaming in front of her. But she was not drinking it. She just sat there, still and quiet, like she was waiting for something. Vrexthar almost turned around. He almost walked away and pretended he had never seen her. But something pulled him forward. Before he knew what he was doing, he was standing next to her table. "You are still here," he said. Maya looked up at him without surprise. It was like she had been expecting him. "So are you," she replied. "Sit down, Commander. I think we have more to talk about." He sat across from her, his large frame barely fitting in the small chair designed for lighter species. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They just looked at each other, two warriors from opposite sides of a conflict that had shaped both their lives. "I cannot stop thinking about what you said," Vrexthar admitted finally. The words felt strange coming out of his mouth. He was not used to admitting weakness to anyone, let alone an enemy. "I know. That is why you are here." "How did you know?" Maya smiled, and this time there was a hint of warmth in it. "Because I remember what it felt like. When the questions started. When the certainty began to crack. It is like a disease. In a way, once it gets inside you, it spreads to everything. I do not want it to spread. I know that too. But it is too late now. You cannot unask a question once it has been asked." You cannot unknow something once you have learned it. Vrexthar felt a surge of frustration. Then what am I supposed to do? I am a soldier. Fighting is all I know. If I cannot believe in what I do, then what is left? Maya took a sip of her drink before answering. That is the question I spent 5 years trying to answer after I left the military. 5 years of traveling from system to system, doing odd jobs, trying to find something that would fill the space where my purpose used to be. Did you find it? I found something. I do not know if it is the answer, but it is enough for now. What is it? Maya set down her cup and looked at him with those ancient eyes. I help people. Not in the way I used to, with weapons and violence, but in smaller ways. I work on refugee ships. I volunteer at medical stations. I teach children on colony worlds that cannot afford proper schools. Little things that probably do not make much difference in the grand scheme of the universe. That sounds weak, Vrexthar said, but there was no conviction in his voice. Maybe it is. Maybe I am just trying to balance the scales in a way that will never work. Maybe every life I help now will never make up for the lives I took. But at least I am trying. At least I am doing something other than adding to the destruction. Vrexthar was quiet for a long time. He watched the ships outside the window, thinking about all the places they might be going. All the lives being lived on each of them. All the names he would never know. Tell me about the first human you killed, Maya said suddenly. The request caught him off guard. Why? Because I want to understand. I want to know what you remember and what you have forgotten. I want to know if you ever saw them as people or only as targets. Vrexthar wanted to refuse. He wanted to stand up and walk away and never see this human again. But he stayed in his seat. And after a moment, he began to speak. It was during the First Contact War. The early days, before either side really understood what they were fighting. I was young then, barely out of training, full of fire and glory, and dreams of becoming a hero. He paused, remembering. The memories were old and faded, but they were still there. We were sent to a human colony on the edge of contested space. Our orders were to capture the settlement and secure any technology or intelligence we could find. We expected light resistance. We expected civilians who would surrender at the first sign of superior force. Maya nodded slowly. But that is not what you found. No, the colony had a militia, farmers and workers who had never been soldiers. They had basic weapons and almost no training. By all logic, they should have given up immediately, but they did not. They fought us for 3 days, 3 days against a professional Korthani assault unit. They used everything they had. Improvised explosives, traps, ambushes. They turned every building into a fortress, and every street into a kill zone. Vrexthar's voice had grown quieter. He was no longer telling a story of glory. He was confessing something. On the second day, I cornered one of them in a warehouse. He was older, maybe 60 years by human counting. He had a farming tool in his hand, not even a real weapon, just something he had grabbed when the attack started. What happened? He looked at me and he said something. I did not understand the words at the time. We did not have translation technology back then, but I remember the sound of his voice. Calm. Steady, not afraid. Vrexthar closed his 4 eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, they were darker than before. I killed him, quick and clean, like I was trained. But before he died, he smiled at me. This small, strange smile that I did not understand. It stayed with me for years. I saw it every time I closed my eyes. What do you think he was saying? Maya asked. I found out later, when I learned some of your language. He was telling me about his wife. About how they had built that farm together over 30 years. About how she had died the year before and how he was ready to see her again. Maya reached across the table and put her hand on his arm. The touch surprised him. Humans were known for avoiding physical contact with other species. It was too dangerous for most of them. He was telling you his name, she said softly. In his own way, he was making sure someone would remember who he was, but I did not remember. I forgot about him for years. I buried him under all the other kills, all the other victories. He was just another number. But you remember now. Vrexthar looked at her hand on his arm. It was so small compared to his own. So fragile. Yet it felt steadier than anything he had ever known. His name was Thomas, he said. Thomas Reed. I looked it up in the colony records years later. I do not know why. I just needed to know. That was the first step, Maya said. When you started looking for his name, you started seeing him as a person. That is when everything changes. They sat in silence for a while after that. The cafe had emptied out, and the staff was starting to clean up for the night. But neither of them moved to leave. There is something else, Vrexthar said finally. Something I never told anyone. What is it? Thomas Reed had a daughter. She was not in the colony when we attacked. She was on Earth, studying at one of your universities. I tracked her down after I found his name. I do not know why. Maybe I wanted to see what kind of family he had. What kind of life he had lived. Before I ended it. I ended it. Maya's grip on his arm tightened slightly. What did you find? She became a doctor. She spent her life helping people, saving lives on colony worlds that could not afford proper medical care. She had 2 children of her own. She named her son Thomas, after her father. Vrexthar's voice cracked slightly. It was the first time in decades that anything had made him lose control of his emotions. She died 3 years ago. Natural causes. Surrounded by her family and friends and patients who loved her. She lived a good life. A full life. And she never knew that I was the one who took her father from her. End quote. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, would it have changed anything if she had known? I do not know. Maybe she would have hated me. Maybe she would have wanted revenge. Or maybe she would have forgiven me. I will never know. Because I was too afraid to face her. Are you still afraid? The question cut through all of Vrexthar's defenses. He sat there, exposed and vulnerable in a way he had not been since childhood. Yes, he admitted. I am afraid of what I might find if I look too closely at my own life. I am afraid that everything I believed in was a lie. I am afraid that I wasted 40 years serving a cause that did not deserve my loyalty. Maya stood up from the table and came around to sit next to him. It was a bold move. Getting that close to a Korthani warrior was dangerous under any circumstances. But she did not seem to care. Fear is good, she said. Fear means you are paying attention. Fear means you are starting to see the truth. What truth? That we are all connected. Every life touches every other life. Every choice ripples outward in ways we cannot predict. When you killed Thomas Reed, you changed the course of his daughter's life. When she became a doctor, she changed the lives of everyone she treated. And those people went on to change even more lives. The web goes on forever, in directions we cannot follow. Vrexthar thought about this. He thought about the 17 humans he had killed, and all the lives they might have lived. All the children they might have had. All the discoveries they might have made. All the love they might have given and received. How do you live with it? He asked. Knowing what you know. Seeing what you see. How do you wake up every morning and keep going? Maya leaned back in her chair and looked out at the stars. I remind myself that I cannot change the past. I cannot undo what I did. The people I killed are gone, and no amount of guilt or regret will bring them back. Then what is the point? The point is the future. The point is that every day I wake up, I have a choice. I can add more darkness to the universe, or I can try to add some light. It is not much. It is not enough. But it is something. Vrexthar felt something shifting inside him. Something old and hard was starting to crack. I do not know how to add light, he said. I only know how to destroy. Maya smiled at him, and for the first time, it reached her eyes. Then maybe it is time to learn something new. She stood up and reached out her hand. It was an invitation, an offer, a chance at something different. Vrexthar looked at that small, fragile human hand. He thought about everything he had ever been taught. He thought about honor and duty and the glory of the Korthani Empire. He thought about 40 years of blood and violence and the growing collection of trophies in his locked box. Then he thought about Thomas Reed, smiling at him in that warehouse, speaking words he did not understand. Vrexthar reached out and took Maya's hand. "Where do we start?" he asked. "There is a refugee ship leaving tomorrow," Maya said. "They need help unloading supplies and setting up temporary shelters. It is hard work, and it does not pay anything. But it is a beginning." Vrexthar nodded slowly. A beginning. That was more than he had hoped for. They walked out of the cafe together, the Korthani warrior and the human soldier. Two killers, trying to find a different path. Behind them, the stars continued to burn, indifferent to the small dramas playing out in their light. But somewhere in the vast web of cause and effect that connected all living things, something had changed. A new thread had been woven into the pattern. A new possibility had been born, and sometimes, that is enough. 2 years had passed since that night in the cafe. 2 years of changes that Vrexthar could never have imagined. He stood on the observation deck of the medical frigate Mercy's Hope, watching a small blue planet grow larger in the view screen. It was called New Haven, a human colony world that had been devastated by a plague 6 months earlier. The disease had killed thousands before it was contained, and the survivors were still struggling to rebuild their shattered society. The Mercy's Hope was here to help. Its cargo holds were filled with medicine and food and building supplies. Its crew was made up of volunteers from a dozen different species, all working together for a common purpose. And somehow, impossibly, Vrexthar was one of them. He was wearing a simple gray uniform now, instead of his military armor. His weapons were locked away in storage, unused since the day he had walked out of that cafe with Maya. The ritual scars on his skin were the same, but they felt different now, less like badges of honor and more like reminders of a past he was trying to move beyond. "You are thinking too hard again." He turned to find Maya standing behind him, a slight smile on her face. She had not changed much in the past 2 years. A few more lines around her eyes, a few more gray hairs mixed with the black. But her presence was the same. Steady, calm, anchored in something he was still learning to understand. "I am thinking about what happens next," he said. "When we land. When I have to face them. The colonists? Yes. They are humans. They will know what I am. They will know what my people have done to theirs." Maya walked over to stand beside him at the window. "They might. Or they might just see someone who came to help. Someone who could have stayed away but chose to be here instead. You make it sound simple. It is simple. It is just not easy." Vrexthar made a sound that might have been a laugh in another lifetime. "You always say that. Because it is always true." The ship began its descent toward the planet's surface. Vrexthar felt the familiar vibration of atmospheric entry, a sensation he had experienced hundreds of times before. But this time was different. This time he was not coming to conquer or destroy. He was coming to build. They landed at what remained of the colony's main settlement. Once, it had been a thriving town of 30,000 people. Now, it was a ghost of its former self. Empty buildings stood like silent monuments to the lives that had been lost. The streets were quiet, and the few people who moved through them had the hollow look of survivors who were still learning how to live again. The unloading began immediately. Crates of supplies were carried down from the ship by a stream of volunteers. Medical teams set up temporary clinics in the ruins of what had once been a school. Engineers began assessing the damage to the power grid and water systems. Vrexthar threw himself into the work. He carried crates that would have taken 3 humans to lift. He dug through rubble to reach trapped supplies. He did whatever was needed, wherever it was needed, without complaint or hesitation. At first, the colonists kept their distance. They watched him with wary eyes, whispering to each other when they thought he could not hear. He understood their fear. The Korthani had not been kind to humanity during the wars. The memories of that violence were still fresh in many minds. But as the days passed, something began to change. People saw that he was here to help, not to harm. They saw him working alongside humans and other species without prejudice or aggression. They saw him treating everyone with the same gruff kindness that had become his trademark over the past 2 years. On the 5th day, A young human girl approached him while he was resting near the supply depot. She could not have been more than 6 or 7 years old, with bright eyes and tangled hair that suggested she had not seen a proper bath in weeks. "You are very big," she said, looking up at him without fear. Vrexthar did not know how to respond. He had never been good with children. On the battlefield, he had avoided them whenever possible. The idea of harming someone so young and helpless had always felt wrong, even when his orders demanded it. "Yes," he said finally. "My name is Sarah. What is yours?" "Vrexthar." The girl tried to repeat it but got stuck on the first syllable. She frowned in concentration, then tried again. "Vek. Can I call you Vek?" He should have refused. Names were important in Korthani culture. To allow someone to shorten or change your name was to grant them a level of intimacy that was usually reserved for family. But something about this child made him want to say yes. "You may call me Vek," he said. Sarah smiled, revealing a gap where 2 of her front teeth should have been. "Vek, will you help me find my dog? He got lost when the sickness came. Mama says he is probably dead, but I do not believe her." Vrexthar looked at Maya, who was watching from a nearby tent. She gave him a small nod. "I will help you look," he said, "but I cannot promise we will find him. That is okay. Mama says hope is important, even when things seem bad." They spent the rest of the afternoon searching through the abandoned parts of town. Sarah chattered constantly, telling him about her life before the plague, about her father, who had been one of the first to die, about her mother, who worked at the medical clinic now and cried at night when she thought Sarah was asleep, about her dog, a small brown creature named Biscuit, who had been her best friend since she was a baby. Vrexthar listened without interrupting. He had never understood why humans talked so much. Korthani were a quieter species, preferring action to words. But there was something soothing about Sarah's voice, something that made the weight on his shoulders feel a little lighter. As the sun began to set, they found Biscuit. The dog was hiding in the basement of a collapsed building, thin and dirty but alive. When Sarah called his name, he came running out and jumped into her arms with a joy that seemed to fill the entire street. Vrexthar watched the reunion with something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. He had seen so much death in his life, so much destruction and loss. He had forgotten that there could be moments like this, moments of pure, simple happiness. "Thank you, Vek," Sarah said, looking up at him with tears in her eyes. "Thank you for helping me. Thank you for helping me." He did not know what to say. He had never been thanked for anything before. Not like this. Not with genuine gratitude and affection. "You are welcome," he managed finally. Sarah reached up and took his hand. Her small fingers barely wrapped around one of his claws. "Will you come meet my mama? She will want to thank you too." Vrexthar hesitated. Meeting more humans, seeing more lives that he could have destroyed in another timeline, was not something he looked forward to. But Sarah was tugging at his hand with surprising strength, and he found that he could not refuse her. Sarah's mother was named Elena. She was working at the medical clinic when they arrived, her face lined with exhaustion and grief. But when she saw Biscuit in Sarah's arms, something broke inside her. She fell to her knees and gathered both her daughter and the dog into a tight embrace, sobbing with a release of tension that had been building for months. Vrexthar stood awkwardly to the side, unsure whether to leave or stay. Maya appeared beside him, as she always seemed to do when he needed her. "This is what it feels like," she said quietly. "To give instead of take. To build instead of destroy. It feels strange," he admitted. "It gets easier with time. The strangeness becomes familiarity. The guilt becomes something you can live with." Also, Elena finally looked up and noticed Vrexthar standing there. Her eyes widened as she took in his size, his scars, his clearly Korthani features. For a moment, fear flickered across her face. Then Sarah said, "Mama, this is Vek. He helped me find Biscuit. He is very nice." Elena's fear faded slowly, replaced by something more complicated. She stood up, keeping one hand on Sarah's shoulder. and looked directly at Vrexthar. "Thank you," she said, "for helping my daughter. I know it cannot be easy for you to be here, among us. After everything that has happened, it is not easy," Vrexthar agreed. "But it is necessary." Elena studied his face for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised him completely. She stepped forward and hugged him. The embrace was brief and awkward. Vrexthar had no idea what to do with his arms, but it carried a weight that went beyond the simple physical contact. It was forgiveness, not complete, not unconditional, but a beginning, a crack in the wall that separated their two peoples. When Elena stepped back, there were tears on her cheeks. "My husband served in the border conflict," she said quietly. "He was killed by Korthani soldiers 15 years ago. I spent a long time hating your kind for what happened." Vrexthar did not look away. "I understand. But when the plague came, when everything fell apart, I realized that hate does not keep you warm at night. It does not feed your children or rebuild your home. It just takes and takes until there is nothing left." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I do not know if I can ever fully forgive what happened, but I can try to see you as a person instead of an enemy. That is all any of us can do." Vrexthar thought about Thomas Reed, about the 17 humans whose names he had finally learned after months of research, about all the lives he had ended and all the futures he had stolen. "That is more than I deserve," he said. Elena smiled, a fragile expression that held both pain and hope. "Maybe. But we do not always get what we deserve. Sometimes we get a chance to start over, to be something different than what we were." The work on New Haven continued for 3 more months. Vrexthar stayed the entire time, even when the Mercy's Hope left to respond to other emergencies. He helped rebuild houses and repair infrastructure. He taught some of the colonists basic engineering skills that he had picked up during his military career. He played with Sarah and the other children who had slowly lost their fear of him. On the day before he finally left, the colony held a small celebration to thank all the volunteers who had helped them recover. There was music and food and dancing, activities that Vrexthar had never participated in before. He sat at the edge of the gathering, watching the humans and other species interact with a sense of wonder that still felt new. Maya sat down beside him with 2 cups of something sweet-smelling. She handed one to him without asking if he wanted it. "You have changed," she observed. "Yes. Do you regret it?" Vrexthar considered the question carefully. He thought about his old life, the glory and the violence, the certainty that had once defined his existence. He thought about the locked box of trophies that he had finally opened 2 months ago, sending each item back to the families of those he had killed along with a letter of apology. Most had never responded. A few had sent back messages of anger and pain. One, the daughter of a soldier he had killed in the Outer Rim conflict, had written simply, "Thank you for telling me what happened to my father. It does not change anything, but it helps to know. I regret many things," he said finally. "I regret the lives I took and the pain I caused. I regret the years I spent believing that violence was the only answer. But I do not regret who I am becoming." Maya nodded slowly. "That is wisdom. It took me a long time to reach that place. How did you know that I could change? That night in the cafe, you could have walked away. You could have seen me as just another enemy and left me to my own darkness." Maya was quiet for a moment, watching the celebration unfold before them. When she spoke again, her voice was soft. "Because I saw myself in you. The soldier who counted kills like achievements. The warrior who believed that death was the only gift worth giving. I knew that if I could find a different path, then maybe you could too. And if I had not changed, if I had gone back to my old ways, then I would have been wrong. But at least I would have tried. That is all any of us can do, Vrexthar. We try. We fail sometimes, we succeed sometimes, but we keep trying because the alternative is to give up, and that is the one thing I cannot accept." Vrexthar raised his cup in a gesture he had learned from the humans. "To trying," he said. Maya touched her cup to his. "To trying." They sat together in comfortable silence, as the night deepened around them. Somewhere in the crowd, Sarah was dancing with her mother, Biscuit bouncing at their feet. Somewhere beyond the atmosphere, ships were carrying people to new destinations and new possibilities. Somewhere, in the vast universe, wars were still being fought and lives were still being lost. But here, on this small world that had been touched by tragedy and was slowly healing, there was peace. There was hope. There was the promise that tomorrow could be different from yesterday. Vrexthar thought about the question Maya had asked him that first night in the cafe. What were their names? He knew all of them now. All 17. He carried them with him like a prayer, a reminder of who he had been and who he was trying to become. Thomas Reed, Sarah Martinez, John Chen, Emma Williams, David Kim, Michael Johnson, Rebecca Taylor, James Anderson, Maria Garcia, Robert Brown, Jennifer Davis, Christopher Wilson, Amanda Miller, Stephen Moore, Lisa Jackson, Daniel White, Jessica Harris. 17 names, 17 lives, 17 stories that had ended because of him. He would never be able to make it right. He would never be able to bring them back or undo the pain he had caused. But he could honor their memory by becoming someone worthy of their sacrifice. He could spend the rest of his life adding light to a universe that had too much darkness. It was not enough. It would never be enough. But it was a beginning, and sometimes, that is all any of us can ask for.